My daughter was 8 the day she asked me if I loved her, and I knew instantly those words hadn't grown in her own mouth. She stood in the doorway holding the sleeve of her sweater like it could answer for me, and her eyes were wide the way children's eyes get right before they decide whether the world is safe. She said Aunt Sarah told her some moms love work more than children and that some moms have cold hearts, and I was probably one of them. I felt the floor tilt even though we were standing still. I knelt down and tucked her hair behind her ear and told her the truth in the plainest way I knew. I told her I loved her so much it scared me sometimes. I told her love can look like waking up early and coming home late because the lights have to stay on and the lunchbox has to be full. I told her grown-ups who are hurt inside sometimes say things that should never land on a child. She believed me for a moment because children want to believe their mothers, and then she said, "But Aunt Sarah said you only say that because you're busy." I felt something steady in me harden into a decision. I said we were going to talk to Aunt Sarah together. She asked if we were in trouble. I said no, we were going to teach someone a boundary. Before I rang my sister's bell, my mind ran the same old reel it always played when I thought about us. I remembered being 15 and watching her skip homework for a late movie because the boy with the chipped tooth liked her laugh. I remembered cleaning the kitchen so Mom wouldn't yell and Sarah swanning in with hair smelling like smoke and summer and saying I worried too much. I remembered the way teachers and aunts said, "You'll go far" to me and "You're so charming" to her, and how we both heard it as comparison even when it was meant as praise. I remembered my first management job and her first almost job and the way she told me I was lucky and I told her luck looks a lot like showing up. I remembered the afternoon she said I was becoming one of those women who live for calendars and I pretended that didn't hurt. She loved ideas. I loved execution. She loved beginnings. I loved finishes. She loved me when I was soft. She resented me when I was firm. We were sisters and sometimes adversaries and always magnets pulling each other back to old roles. Sarah opened the door with the smile she wears for neighbors and delivery drivers and people she wants to keep on her side. She said, "Hey, Peanut," to my daughter and pretended not to see the storm in my face. I said we needed to talk. She tilted her head like I was being dramatic, then stepped aside and let us in. My daughter went to the couch and hugged a pillow like it was a dog. I stayed standing. I asked Sarah exactly what she'd told my child. She said I was overreacting. She said she'd been just honest because kids see everything anyway. She said my daughter had asked why I work so late and she had simply explained that some people like work a lot. I asked her if she'd used the words cold heart. She didn't answer fast enough. That was my answer. I told her we were going to put this in grown-up words for a grown-up problem. I said you do not see doubt in a child's chest and call it honesty. I said you do not touch what you did not build. I said I was the one who sits up with fevers and coughs and nightmares, the one who handles the school calls and the dentist and the forgotten recorder on music day, the one who packs lunches and prints permission slips and knows which sock fabric scratches and which friend tells jokes too mean. I said love looks like showing up even when your inbox is a burning field. She rolled her eyes and said I loved my inbox. She said I chose meetings over family dinners. She said my daughter had told her about the canceled movie and the missed recital and the time I texted during bedtime. She said she had only asked a question out loud that everyone was thinking. I wanted to claw back time and hold up every good hour like a lantern. Instead, I told the story she never believes all the way through. I told her I left a marriage that was dying because I wouldn't let my daughter learn that women should twist themselves into the shapes other people prefer. I told her I rebuilt our life on the scaffolding of a job that pays better than love letters and pays worse than my patience. I told her I am tired because I am carrying more than my share and I carry it because it's mine to carry. She said I make everything sound noble. She said I was still the teacher's pet who wanted a grade for breathing. She said I had always wanted gold stars. I laughed because sometimes laughter is a fuse. I told her the only stars I count now are on the ceiling of a child's bedroom when she falls asleep. My daughter's eyes kept sliding between us like she was watching ping pong. I lifted her into my lap and told her she could stay or play in the kitchen. She said she wanted to stay because this was about her too. She is 8, but sometimes she is old. I told her I was going to talk to Aunt Sarah in a voice she might not have heard before, and that none of it would be about her. She nodded with the solemn dignity of a child who has recently learned the map of adult conversation. I turned back to my sister and told her we needed to talk about jealousy. She snapped that she wasn't jealous. I said jealousy doesn't always look like wanting someone's shoes. Sometimes it looks like wanting their mistakes. Sometimes it looks like trying to make their wins feel like cheats. Sometimes it looks like telling a child a story that makes her mother smaller. I said when she posts photos of her mornings at the lake while I clock in, I don't envy her. But when she uses my work as a cudgel against me in the mouth of my child, then yes, I hear the hiss of envy. She said she was just trying to be a good aunt. She said somebody needed to tell my kid the truth. I asked whose truth. She said the truth that a mom who works that much can't really be there. I said being there isn't a location, it's a posture. I said if she wanted to talk about who is there, we could talk about the parent-teacher conferences she didn't attend with me, the Saturday mornings she slept through while I taught fractions over pancakes, the field trip sign-ups she forgot to forward for the classroom where she sometimes volunteers because it feels purposeful until it's early. She said I was being cruel. I said I was being specific. She tried a different move then. She said I had always made her feel small. She said our mother favored me and I didn't even have to try. She said I had a straight line while she had a maze. She said I collect trophies and call them sacrifices. I took a breath and reached for a voice that didn't shake. I said our mother favored whoever was easiest that day. I said I was easy because I did all the work. I said if she wanted a straight line, she could have gotten one by showing up on time and staying through the boring parts. I said I don't want her life to look like mine, but I want her mouth to stop carving mine into something ugly in front of my child. She flinched at that because sometimes the truth chooses a sharp edge. My daughter tugged my sleeve and said, "Can I say something?" I told her yes. She looked at her aunt and said, "When you said my mom doesn't love me, it felt like my insides dropped. It felt like the day I lost my red scarf." She said she had cried in the bathroom because she didn't want to cry in front of her aunt. She said she kept thinking about the night I fell asleep in her bed by accident and how my arm was heavy, but I didn't move even when my phone buzzed. She said love felt like that. She said she didn't want anyone to take that away. Sarah's mouth opened and closed. She said she would never want to hurt her niece. She said she was only worried about me burning out. I told her worry is not permission. I told her if she is worried, she can ask me directly. I told her if she is worried, she can offer a school pickup or a dinner or a weekend morning. I told her she cannot comfort herself by making me the villain in a story where she gets to be the brave aunt. I told her I have done too many brave things in too many rooms for the people I love to be the ones who misunderstand my courage. She tried to joke. She said I sounded like a TED Talk. I said I sounded like a woman who ran out of swallowing. I said I sounded like a mother who needs her sister to grow up. I said I sounded like a boundary being built. She crossed her arms and asked if I was cutting her off. I said I would never cut her off from my daughter's life for a mistake if she apologized to my daughter with the same energy she made the mistake. I said I would cut her off from the parts of me that keep breaking when she refuses to stop using my choices to soothe her own. I told her I was done letting her live rent-free in my decisions. She stared at the floor. She said I had changed. I said I had. I said it was called mothering and healing and growing the muscle that stops a train when it's headed at your child. I said I used to want to be her friend. I said now I only wanted to be her sister if sister meant safety, not sabotage. She whispered an apology then, the small kind, the kind that asks to be enough. She said she didn't mean it like that. She said she was sorry I was hurt. I shook my head. I said she needed to apologize to the child she injured, not the adult she annoyed. She turned to my daughter and stumbled through something about loving her very much and choosing words badly and promising to never say anything like that again. My daughter nodded politely because she is kind, and then she looked at me to see if that was the end. I told Sarah I needed space. I said no drop-ins. I said no little comments. I said no shade in group texts I'm not in. I said if she uses the word cold about me again, I will teach my daughter by example how to leave a room. I said if she wants to be the kind of aunt my child needs, she can start with showing up for things and staying until the cleanup and not making it about herself. I said if she wants me in her life, she can learn the difference between teasing and undermining. I said I would not debate this again. She said I was making a big deal. I said it is a big deal. I said the story a child hears about her mother becomes the story she tells herself about being loved. I said we do not gamble with that. I stood and took my daughter's hand. Sarah asked if I was punishing her. I said no. I said I was protecting the thing I'm responsible for. She said she needed me. I said she needed herself. She said she didn't know how to be that. I said I hoped she would figure it out. I said I would not be the mirror she uses to check if she is glowing. At the door, my daughter squeezed my fingers and said she wanted ice cream. I said yes, because sometimes the body needs sweetness after a hard truth. We walked to the corner shop and sat on the curb with napkins turning to lace in our hands. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was shaking and proud at the same time. She said she was too. That night, I wrote an email to my sister because written words hold people more accountable than spoken ones. I summarized what was said. I drew the boundary in clear ink. I said we would take a pause and revisit when she had done some work I could see. I said I loved her in the way you love someone you grew up with, and also that love is not a hall pass. I pressed send and put my phone face down. In the weeks that followed, my life got quieter at the edges and louder where it mattered. We made Tuesday soup a ritual, and I stopped pretending bedtime needed to be efficient. I moved a meeting that always cut into pickup and nothing exploded. I taught my daughter how to crack an egg and how to throw a ball without twisting her wrist and how to say, "I need you to stop now," when someone crosses a line. I apologized to her for every time my phone had stolen my eyes, and I meant it, and I showed it. I told her she could always ask me if she needed proof. She asked for proof the next morning just to see if she could. I showed up at lunch with a note in her sandwich, and we laughed at our secret. Sarah texted sometimes, small weather reports and photos of sunsets and sorry again on repeat. I didn't answer for a while. When I did, I told her we could try coffee without my daughter and see how it went. We met on a bench under a tree that drops sticky pods in June. She cried before she spoke. She said being near me makes her feel like she is failing. She said that is not my fault, but it is her reality. She said she thought poking my life would make hers hurt less. She said it did not. I said I hoped she'd find the thing that made her feel alive without needing me to feel less alive to make it true. I said I would not be a safe target anymore. I said if she wanted to know about my daughter, she could ask me, and if she wanted to love my daughter, she could show up with sneakers and chalk and patience. I said she could not ever again stand between my daughter and me with a story about who I am. We are not healed. We are simply honest. That is its own relief. She comes by on Saturdays, sometimes with muffins and leaves, when I ask without testing the fence. She asks if she can take my daughter to the park, and I say yes and pack sunscreen and an orange, and my daughter returns smelling like sweat and dust and triumph. Sarah sends me photos of crooked monkey bar victories and does not caption them with digs. When she slips and says something like, "Your mom is busy," my daughter says, "She's busy loving me," and Sarah corrects herself without prompting. One night, months later, as I was tucking my daughter in, she whispered, "I never doubted it today." I asked, "Doubted what?" She said, "Whether you love me." She said it felt like the way blankets feel when they're warm from the dryer. She said Aunt Sarah was different now. I said sometimes people learn. I said sometimes they don't. I said we don't wait to find out before we protect ourselves. I lay on the carpet beside her bed after she fell asleep and thought about the word cold. I thought about the way women are taught to fear it in themselves and seek it in others. I thought about the heat in my body when I told my sister the truth and the cool in my body after, and how both belong to me. I thought about the girl I was and the woman I am, and the mother who will keep building walls where they are needed and doors where they are safe. I thought about how love is a set of practiced actions and not a set of practiced lines. I let the phone buzz where it wanted on the dresser and didn't reach for it. I watched my daughter breathe. I measured time by the rise and fall. I remembered the doorway and the question and the way a small voice can drag a whole family into the light. And then I slept without dreaming, because sometimes telling the truth is its own lullaby. It had been almost half a year before she finally showed up at my door without a text first. It was raining, the kind of rain that makes the air smell like metal, and I could see her silhouette through the glass, small, uncertain, carrying something in both hands. When I opened the door, she didn't try to smile. She just said, "Can I come in?" I nodded because I was tired of pretending forgiveness needs a speech. She handed me a small box. Inside were folded letters, the kind she used to write when we were teenagers, and everything felt urgent. The top one was new. I read it while she stood there dripping. It said, "I envied you for building a life that didn't need rescuing. I thought tearing it down would make me feel taller. I was wrong. You were never cold, you were steady." I didn't know the difference. I set the letter down and looked at her for a long time. She looked older in the good way, like someone who had finally stopped running. She said she'd started therapy. She said she realized how much of her life was built on being the fun one and how empty that gets when nobody trusts you with their pain. She said she hated herself for what she'd said to my daughter. I told her I didn't need her to hate herself. I needed her to change. She nodded. She said she had. Then she asked, "Can we start over?" I told her I didn't believe in starting over. I believed in starting differently. I told her boundaries would stay. I told her visits would stay planned. I told her we would keep doing the slow work of being family instead of trying to look like one. She said that was fair. Then she looked around and asked, "Where is she?" meaning my daughter. I said she was upstairs reading. She said, "Can I tell her I'm sorry again?" I said, "Only if you're ready for her to tell you she already forgave you." She bit her lip and said, "I deserve worse." I said, "Maybe. But you don't get to decide what forgiveness looks like anymore." When my daughter came down, Sarah knelt to her level. She didn't use the soft aunt voice this time. She just said, "I hurt you because I was jealous of your mom." I said something that wasn't true because I wanted to feel powerful, and it made me small. "You didn't deserve that." My daughter studied her like she was a math problem, then said, "It's okay. You can try again." And that was it. No ceremony. Just a small hand on, an adult shoulder, and a door opening that nobody forced. After she left, I sat on the porch and watched the rain melt into the soil. For the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't anger or defense or exhaustion. It was release. Not because she had apologized, but because I had stopped needing her to understand everything I'd lived through to love her from a distance. Some people you forgive so they can breathe. Others you forgive so you can. The next morning, she texted me a photo of the sunrise. No caption. I replied with one word, "Peace." And I meant it. Later that week, my daughter and I planted tulip bulbs by the fence. She said, "Aunt Sarah said she wants to visit when they bloom." I said, "We'll see." She smiled, the knowing kind of smile that children wear when they realize adults are just trying to get it right. I pressed my hands into the dirt beside hers and thought about how something broken can grow back, slow and different, but still alive. Maybe that's what love really is, not perfection, not the absence of pain, but the quiet choice to keep building something worth staying for. And for the first time, the silence between me and my sister didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a pause. One we both finally knew how to fill with something honest.